Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Roast into Ceilings podcast. Maggie and I were talking, and we always love to talk about women that inspire us. So,
hmm
today our episode is going to be about trans women that inspire us, their lives, and what we
hmm
like about them.
Yeah, again, we mentioned intersectionality a lot, but we're going to mention it more because we think it's a really important thing to talk about, and that's exactly what we're going to try to do today. So, both me and Isabella have come up with, like she mentioned, lists of trans women who have done a lot for um, equality and like an activist movement for feminism as a whole. It's gonna be a good episode. I'm gonna start us off, and the first person I have decided to mention is Hunter Schafer. Um, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name right. That's on me, but I think she's one of the coolest people in media right now because a model. She's an actress. Most people know her as Jules from Euphoria. That was her I think her big breakout role recently. But then she was in the new Hunger Games movie too, which is so cool. I haven't seen that yet, but I've seen clips of her, and she's really cool. But she really broke out in the scene, and not only is she an actress again, she's like a model too, and she's not just like I'm gonna post for my Instagram a few times. So she's like a model, right? She's walked in some of the biggest brands. I try to make a list of the brands she's walked for, and they got too long. Like she's done Prada, Dior, Vera Wang, Gucci, Margiela, Coach, Helmut Lang, Versace, and so many more, right? So she's big in the media, and she's so loved as well. And it's so nice to see someone be so accepted, um, especially someone who is very open about being trans.
Wow, I love how she's not scared to stand up for what she believes in.
Oh,
And
speaking of that, I'm
uh,
gonna interrupt you. I'm sorry, but she's also like you said. She doesn't. It's not just what her beliefs aren't just about um, LGBT rights. She's also a big. Recently, she's been a big advocate for the Palestinian freedom movement. Recently, she was part of a protest. Joe Biden was talking on TV, and she was a part of a group of people that interrupted to ask about Palestine. And she was arrested. This made the news, and it was really big. And people were saying if a trans woman, and you know how dangerous it is for trans women in prisons, in legal, in under
mhm,
custody, and she's still
mhm.
going out there putting herself in danger as someone who's already a lot of people don't because she is trans and protesting for what she believes is right, which incredible.
That's amazing to the point of getting arrested. It's really impressive how far she went.
Mm.
And also, she's really using the visibility she has because Euphoria and Hunger Games, those were two of the biggest shows, movies out there,
Mhm.
and being a model too, as you said. So I love that she's really using her platform.
No, for real. Like a lot of people, if you got a spot in the Euphoria cast or the Hunger Games cast, you would take the hush money and just live your life, you know? But she's doing everything and making herself uncomfortable, making herself just push herself to her limits to support freedom and rights. And I think she's so cool for that.
That's awesome. Okay, I guess I'll start talking about my first person who is also an advocate. She actually lives in Vancouver, and she is the house manager of Alkiros House, which is under Atira Women's Resource Society. So they're a society that supports women fleeing from domestic violence,
Um,
children as well. And her house is actually the first house in BC that is housing support for transgender people, for non-binary people, two-spirit people. And she was also the first transgender person to win the Courage to Come Back award. So this is an award for people who have struggled with their mental health. It's under Coast Mental Health, so it's also a local thing, which I thought was really cool. And there was this quote that she said in an interview that really caught me. It says, she said that her doctors couldn't look past to see that even though I'm transgender, I'm a person and I have other issues as well in my life. So she's talking about how a lot of times people think, okay, so you're transgender, so all your problems must come from that. So almost not seeing a person as a whole holistically, but only seeing as a person as
yeah.
you're transgender. So she's a big advocate for seeing a person holistically, especially in her housing program.
Mhm. That shocked me that that she's like the first person to ever like be like, okay, transgender people, non-binary people, two-spirit people can also stay in a house that they need. Um, and I'm surprised that I don't know, like Vancouver. When you think about Vancouver, you don't tend to think of it as a super progressive city, especially. But I'm glad that she is here. She's showing she's I'm patriotic and everything. But no, I agree with what you mentioned about her saying like a lot of people don't view trans people as more than just an identity. And I think this is true for a lot of things. People look at trans people and go, "Oh, you make being trans your full identity." But at the same time, it's like you're the ones doing that. You're that's that's not them. That's you. So I think this is a really cool thing to mention.
Yeah, definitely. And especially because like you're saying in Vancouver, we have a big homelessness problem. Definitely in East Hastings too, which is where this house is. And the thing about low barrier housing is that anybody can go there, right? So a lot of times it puts homelessness is a marginalized community, but it puts other marginalized communities like transgender people in a lot of danger for abuse in those houses. So it's great that we have one specifically for transgender people now.
Yeah, that is really cool. Do you know how long this has been open? Like, is it
Ooh,
like a
I'm not
recent
sure.
thing or like?
I want to say 2021, I think.
Oh,
I'm not totally sure though.
that's more recent than I thought it'd be. Well, you know what? That's really great progress, and I'm glad that we're doing that. Um, Next person I have, very noticeable in the media. You'll recognize her name. I have Dylan Mulvaney. Um, Dylan has kind of become the face of trans women for transphobic people recently. If you seen the notice, like anytime people are like putting down trans people, they'll always find a way to bring Dylan up. She's somehow been like thrown into this light of like this is transgender, you know, like this is what we're coming after, um, because of the Bud Light controversy. For you guys that don't know, Dylan Mulvaney went viral on social media because she started doing a Days of Girlhood TikTok series where she basically documented her transition, like from the very, very early stages of like day one. I don't know if she's still doing it or not. I'm not sure. But around like last year, around I think around this time because it was like March Madness last year, um, she did a sponsorship with Bud Light. It was basically like a 15-second TikTok video where she's like, Bud Light is giving away blah 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 blah. That was it. People didn't like it. People took it as Bud Light being political, ran with it, protested it, boycotted it like crazy. And since then, people have been using Dylan Mulvaney as this like they just thrown her in the spotlight to use her as the face of like their like political agenda. But throughout everything, she still stayed pretty strong. She hasn't faltered. She hasn't like apologized or anything. She's still being her, and I think that's really cool.
That's awesome. I didn't know anything about the Bud Light controversy actually. So that
Really?
was really good to hear. I do love the Days of Girlhood TikToks though. I watch them all the time. I don't know if she's still doing them either because I haven't really been on.
Mm-hmm.
But I
She
thought
made us all
they were so light and fun, but also like
exact.
spreading awareness on what a transition looks like for her
Mm.
because there's not a lot of that in media. So that was really great.
I think the fun and lightness was what made her originally so loved, like on TikTok. So it really surprised me when she released her song Days of Girlhood, inspired by that fun and airy and energetic series, and people hated it. A lot of people who have been saying themselves as trans rights advocates and like saying they're allies and they loved her originally were saying like, this song is a bit too far. You're singing about retail therapy and like walks of shames and like taking medication. Is that what you think girlhood is? Is that all that girlhood is to you? And while I can see where they're coming from, where it's like that girlhood is, it's more than that, and there is a lot of more pain. There's a lot more suffering behind it. She didn't say there wasn't. Like she wasn't in her song going, "This is all that girlhood is," you know?
Yeah, and the victimization piece of it is definitely a big thing. Like, she doesn't only have to talk about the suffering. She's allowed to talk about the things she likes about girlhood, which is what her whole series is about, and that's specific to her, like we were saying. So,
It's like, yeah, like I know what she's coming from. I also like to spend my money when I feel sad, you know? Like, that might not be everyone's girlhood. She never claimed it was anyone's girlhood. It's mine. It's hers. It's mine. Like, and I think if she wants to make a fun song, so many other girls, cis women, have made songs about, like, this light, airy, like, vibe of California girls. Everyone loves California girls, you know?
That's
And it's like,
true.
what's the difference, you know? You don't get people asking Katy Perry, sing about sexism. Like, you don't, people aren't doing that.
She's just trying to make her summer banger. It's
This is
okay.
true. Streaming days of girlhood, I guess.
Okay. My next person is also a celebrity, so that's great. I have Laverne Cox. She's an actress, and you might know her from Orange is the New Black, which is a show about prison. I don't know much more than that because I haven't actually watched it, but my mom is a big fan of it, so I can say that. So I read a little bit about some interviews about her childhood and kind of her life progression. So in childhood, she took a lot of dance classes, which a lot of actresses do. So jazz, tap, but her mom didn't let her take ballet because it was seen as too feminine. And a lot of the adults and peers in her life was shaming her for dance because they're like, "Oh, that's too feminine. A boy can't do dance." But she's actually the first openly transgender person to be nominated for an Emmy now. So she came a long way, and she's super famous now for her work as an actress. And I did take a quote that I really liked. She said, "I was told many times that I wouldn't be able to have a mainstream career as an actress because I'm trans, because I'm black, and here I am, and it feels really good."
Oh, that's so sweet. I did see her in Orange is the New Black. I remember this. It was like 3 years ago, and I watched one episode, and the show bored me. But I did really like her, and I remember that very clearly. Never finished the show, but she was really good at it. So maybe I should finish it, but I don't know. I got too. Prison was scary. Okay, so I'm not going back to this one. But no, I think the ballet thing. I think we talked about this in a past episode very briefly, but the ballet industry definitely is. It could use a lot of work in terms of gender progression. So I'm glad that she's really open about that. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of people have this like hopelessness, especially if you're like super like you have so many people in your childhood telling you, "Oh, you're never gonna make it. You're never gonna um, do what you want to do because of who you are." Like that probably feels horrible, but she's here saying like, "Oh, it did feel horrible. Oh, I'm still a star." I think that's
Yeah.
you know. Um, the next person I have is someone else who came out recently in the past year-ish and has also been the new face of controversy and the people have been using as their anti-trans people agenda, which is Kris Tyson from Mr. Beast. I brought this up briefly to Isabella before we started recording, and she went, "I don't know who that is." So
I'm excited.
I think no, but if you've ever watched a Mr. Beast video, okay, you've seen Kris. Um, she came out, I think, in either 2023 or like late 20. I'm not sure. It's like a year ish, but she revealed that she's been taking HRT for a while. Um, and she's very like slowly transitioned. Like she started going like she they for a bit, and then now just she her. And she's also recently started using the name Ava too. So I think she goes by Ava Kris Tyson now. So she's been very openly documenting her journey, just as Dylan has. Um, Throughout her transition, which has been pretty cool to see. But she has been a victim of transphobia, but especially like the kind of misinformation behind it. If you go on any video about her, people are so misinformed. The first thing you'll see transphobia, but people hide it under like the oh, but you left your wife and you left your kid. You know, they act like it's not the trans thing they have an issue with. They act like it's the family thing, but like a lot of people don't know and they don't care to look. But Kris has so openly been like, oh, I hang out with my kid all the time, and I co-parent with my ex-wife all the time, and they were separated before she even came out. So it's just a victim of like misinformation and like slander. But it's cool to see how after everything, she's still doing Mr. Beast challenges and she's still doing what she's always done because she's like, nothing's changed except for the fact that I'm on HRT and I'm happier and I love life more and I'm more confident.
Oh my gosh. I love that. Now, when I watch a Mr. Beast video, I actually can know things about the people there. Usually I don't. So,
No, she's been a big advocate for HRT and like she's talked about how it's almost like saved her life because it's just made her like so much happier. It's like helped with dysphoria. Um, and she's done a lot of like she's talked openly about how like she advocates for being able to get these um this help. So I think it's really cool that also the fact that she does have a younger audience being like on like the Mr. Beast videos, and a lot of people get mad at her for that. They're like, "Oh, but your audience is kids." Exactly. You know, it's like kids need to know that like it's not that weird. Like it's out of everything, there is more weird things than seeing someone you like transition. Like that's so normal.
yeah, I guess that shows the stigma around it. My kids can't watch you because you're transitioning to another gender. That just shows the stigma there is because kids when we're developing, that's when we get our impression of what the world is, right? That's when we're being like socially constructed, so we need to see these type of things as kids to be able to be aware in our adulthoods. So
This is true. I never really got people saying that like telling people about being trans is going to turn your kids trans because like I found out about trans people when I was really young. I'm not. A lot of people find out about being gay, being trans when they're really young, and they that doesn't make them transition. So, if learning about trans people makes your kid transition, they probably were trans in the first place. You just found out. Like, I don't really get the logic behind that, but you know.
yeah, it's just about learning to be open to each other, I
Mhm.
guess. So that's great. Um, okay, last person. Here we go. So I have Dr. Julia E. Starwarz. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, actually. When I was looking at people, I just saw her last name look like Star Wars, and that made me want to read about her. And she turns out to be a space physicist, and I think it's meant to be. So she transitioned in the midst of her doctoral degrees. So she has
Degrees
all this
plural is
stress.
crazy. Degrees plural. Doctor
Yeah.
degrees plural is crazy.
So she has all this stress, right? From trying to get her PhD while transitioning. And it's not like any of her colleagues at the time were trans. There's a very low representation of transgender people in the STEM field, especially when she was transitioning. So coming out to her colleagues was definitely very difficult because she didn't know how they were going to react. They were never in that kind of situation before. And one thing that she mentioned, which I never thought about, was updating her name on previous academic papers.
Ooh.
She said it gave her a lot of anxiety, right? Going through each of these papers and going, "Oh, I'm gonna change my name. I hope they know who I am," right? Definitely now with our technology, it's better, is what she was saying, but it's definitely this whole process that just makes you really anxious when you don't have a support system, right? So she's a big advocate for having more transgender people in the STEM field and having them heard as well.
I think we talk about this a lot on the podcast. I think one of our guests mentioned this briefly a few episodes back, where it's so much harder for girls to dream about doing something if they can never see people like them in that field. I think that's what you're kind of saying Julia's been saying too, because if you don't see anyone like you in your field and succeeding, that kind of feels like you won't ever get there, but that's not true. So I'm glad that she's being that person for I'm sure so many other trans girls in STEM. Um, sorry, I'm still on the fact that she has a doctorate and like multiple. That's crazy. I don't even know what astrophysics is. I don't even know what that means.
We love the academic weapons.
This is true. But out of all the people we've talked about, um, I think they're pretty different. I think we chose people from like they've all done very different things. Um, but like that's the thing, right? Trans people are just as varied as everyone else, and they're gonna go want to go into all those things. So I think it's always important to see like representation in all the media. Um, so I'm glad that people are doing that and they're succeeding and people can see that.
For sure. Yeah. All the people we talked about today are so great, and I'm glad that we were able to learn a bit more about them.
This is true. If you guys have more people, let us know.
Bye.
Bye, guys.